Lancer Doughty, Movement Dynamics, Presentation 1, Retake. Introduction. The acquisition of soccer skills is fundamental to our enjoyment of the game and is essential to attainment of expertise. Players spend most of their time in practice with the intention of improving technical skills. However, there is a lack of effective acquisition of soccer skills being transferred into matches. Current coaching practice is therefore based on tradition, impression, and technique rather than theoretical evidence. The aim of this review is to question some of the popular beliefs that guide current practice and instruction in soccer. Theoretical evidence is presented to drive out many of these beliefs as myths, thereby challenging coaches to self-reflect and critically evaluate contemporary school of thought. The review should inform sports coaches and practitioners to the important role that those interested in the skill acquisition can play in enhancing performance at all levels of the game. Next factor to consider: the stage of learning. Cognitive, associative, autonomous. Conscious, basic strategies. Associatively unconscious, link the stimulus with response slowly. Autonomous, with stimulus and response that are linked well. The mental stage of learning. Figuring out the skill. This phase, sometimes referred to as the cognitive stage, occurs when the beginning of the athlete is attempting to understand the basic task. Challenges include how to hold up play, take a first touch on the ball, how to place the feet, and where the boundaries are on the pitch. Beginners are not always aware of what they did wrong, nor do they know how to correct errors. They need basic, specific instruction and feedback during this phase. The associative stage of learning. Getting better. At this stage, the athlete understands the fundamentals of the skill and is in the process of refining the skill. They experience fewer errors and can detect some of them on their own. Performances are more consistent and learners begin to know what is relevant and what is not. Here the athlete refines what is needed to accomplish the objective of the skill regardless of the situation. They also begin to learn how to diversify responses for open skills. Ultimate stage of learning. It becomes second nature. This is the last of the stages of learning. At this point, the skill is well learned. The athlete performs the skill automatically without having to focus on execution. There are few areas an athlete can detect and know how to correct them. They can concentrate more on other aspects of the game. As athletes transition from learning to the goal of the skill, perfecting it, coaches can diversify instruction and practice conditions. For closed skill, practices should be structured to match the condition of the competition. For open skills, the coach must systematically vary the conditions under which the skill is being learned and performed in preparation for competition. Run to block practice. Block practice is when a learner performs a single skill over and again, with repetition being key. Variance in training is minimized or non-existent. The learner then moves on to the practice another discrete skill in the same way. Block practice is marked by low levels of what is called cognitive interference. The random practice is marked by high levels of cognitive interference. In simple terms, this means that random practice sets up the challenges learner of cognitive and motor systems to deal with interference of each task onto the next, an element that keeps him and her on his toes and allows for greater retention and skill transfer. Repetition block practice leads to the kind of rote learning that allows for better performance during training sessions, but less skill transfer to competitions and novel situations, as well as lower attention levels over time. One explanation for this is that there are the lower demands on active problem solving and engagement during block practice than during random practice. The important message is that while specific block practice is better for performance, random practice is more effective for skill learning. Advantages of block practice. Repetitive block practice leads to the kind of rote learning that allows for better performance during training sessions. There are lower demands on active problem solving and engagement during block practice. During block practice with repetitive motor patterning, one can effortlessly rely on memory and automaticity of movement. Block practice leads to better performance during training sessions. Athletes and coaches are often led to a false sense of confidence that is cited during competitions when predictability and rote learning are no longer guaranteed. Disadvantages. Not every situation can be transferable into a match. Random practice has detrimental effects on performance during competitions. It facilitates learning either by encouraging the performer to undertake more elaborate and distinctive processing from one trial to the next, whereas block practice doesn't. This is not good for performance, but it's good for skill learning. Next, random practice. Motor learners work on a number of different skills in combination with each other, randomly working trials and patterns of one and then to the next and the next, with each one interleaved on the previous one. The random element means that the learner is forced to be on his toes, not falling into a repetitive routine. Random practice is marked by high levels of cognitive interference. This means that the random practice sets up challenges to the learner's cognitive motor system to deal with the interference of each task onto the next. The benefits of random practice is also to be enhanced skills, to be enhanced when skills differ more markedly. The question of when to introduce random practice conditions presents an interesting challenge for the coach. The task is one of maintaining positive performance effects on the hand so that learners remain motivated to practice. In random practice, the motor learners work on a number of different skills in combination with each other, as mentioned, and trials and patterns of one to the next. The random element means that the learner is forced to be on his toes, not falling into a repetitive routine, whereas block practice does. Advantages. Random practice sets up to challenge the learner's cognitive and motor systems to deal with the interference of each task. An element, again, that keeps him or her on his toes for greater attention and skill transfer. Random practice, when one is forced to work through various skills in a single session, presented randomly, one's cognitive systems must adapt, and it helps them rethink and solve the problem of choosing and executing appropriate motor patterns upon demand. Lastly, random practice will detriment to short-term performance. It's better for long-term attention and learning. Disadvantages. Not every situation can be transferable into a match. Random practice has detrimental effects on performance during acquisition. It facilitates learning by either encouraging the performer to undertake more elaborate and distinctive processing from one trial to the next. Participants may find this hard. This isn't good for performance, however it is good for skill transfer. It's variable practice. The study of learning and memory. Variable practice is also known as mixed practices, referred to the use of training sessions that experience frequent changes of tasks, so that the performer is new to be learned information. Although coaches have the natural tendency towards introducing variable practice, as the learner progresses, typically the progression may occur at a slower rate than optimal. Coaches may wait for the performance to improve before moving on to the more difficult practices. Coaches should try to evaluate performance over an extended period of time, e.g. several training sessions, rather than a single session, and consider whether players would benefit from an early progression towards more variable practice conditions. The benefits of variable practice appear to be particularly pronounced with children, and when the schedule of practice are somewhat unpredictable. When teaching the children soccer instep pass, for instance, coaches should ensure that they vary the practice conditions by manipulating factors such as distance, speed, height, or direction of pass, and that the practice session mimics the range of variations experienced during a match. Another important issue for coaches to consider is whether the practice skill in variable manner. The extent of which the coach emphasizes one type of plan over the other determines the degree of contextual interference presented with each practice session. Advantages. Various practice has been shown to enhance the retention, generalization, and application of acquired skills. Greater diversity of the task may also allow a learner to extract most of the relevant task invariant information. The skill is practiced in a range of situations that could be experienced. Open skills are best practiced in this way. Although varied practice may lead to poor performance throughout the acquisition phase, it is important for the development of the schemata, which is responsible for the assembly and improved retention and transfer of motor learning. Disadvantage: similarly to random practice, it is good for performance but not good for skill transfer. Part practice: when a skill pattern or drill is complex, or there is a considerable element of confusion for the athlete, then it is more appropriate to break down the complex movement into its constituent parts. The parts can be taught and then linked together to develop the final skill, allowing the athletes to groove in. When parts instruction is used, it is important that the athlete is demonstrated the whole skill, so they can appreciate the product and understand how the set of parts will develop the skill. Advantages: beneficial for learning, highly organised tasks such as chesting the ball. When you break down the skill, you limit the possibility of attention overload in your learner and allow for a more effective transfer of the skill from short-term memory to long-term memory. It is also good for working on both open and closed skills. This diagram shows us 4 types of practice and ingredients and lay it out in the grid form, letting us know the relationship between variability in practice, contextual interference, and practice activity. A low contextual interference practice schedule may involve practicing 1 skill per session, or perhaps 2 separate skills, usually shooting and passing, and blocks of 20 to 30 minutes each, which will be a block practice. High levels of contextual interference would arise with a variety of skills, shooting, passing and dribbling will practice in somewhat a random manner throughout the session. This would be a random practice. In most random practice schedule, a player never practiced the same skill on consecutive trials. The source of contextual interference is not well understood at present. It's primarily a theoretical process. Most description assumes that develops because block practice is not sufficiently demanding to produce the best effort or retention. Consistent with the view, contextual interference is reduced or eliminated with more complex tasks. Contextual interference is the effect of learning degree of functional interference found in a practice situation when different tasks must be learned and practiced together. Highly used in random and variability practice. Model programming. Model programming is a hypothetical representation of movement that centrally structures and controls the many degrees of freedom involved in performing an action. Signals sent through different pathways and allows the central nervous system to anticipate, plan, or guide movement. Processing different information, feedback is too slow for ongoing regulation of rapid movements. Could be a reaction time, which increases complexity, suggesting that the movements are planned in advance. Movement is also possible even without feedback from moving the limb. Response to stimuli. The process of becoming aware of sensory stimuli and using that information to influence an action that occurs in stages. Closed loop control. This theory explains slow movements well, but not fast movements. Decisions are made in the brain. Not all information is sent together. Information received by the muscle to initiate the movement. Feedback is always available and is vital to correct movement patterns. Movements that are carried out during day-to-day activity are formed using a continual process of accessing sensory information and using it accurately to continue the motion. This type of motor control is called feedback control, as it relies on sensory feedback to control movements. Feedback control is a situated form of motor control, allowing sensory information about the performance and specific sensory input from the environment which the movement is carried out. The sensory input, while processed, does not necessarily cause conscious awareness of the action. Closed-loop control is a feedback-based mechanism of motor control, where any active environment creates some sort of change that will affect future performance through feedback. Closed-loop motor control is best suited to continuously controlled actions. It does not work quick enough for ballistic actions. Ballistic actions are actions that continue to end without thinking about it, even when they are no longer appropriate. Good feedback control relies on sensory information. As it is slow sensory processing, these movements are subject to speed, accuracy, change. Because sensory processing is being used to control the movement, the faster movement is carried out, the less accurate it will become. Open loop theory. Decisions are made again in the brain. All information for one movement is sent in a single message. The message received by the muscles which perform the movement. Feedback may or may not be available, but it doesn't control the action. Sometimes movements, however, occur too quickly to integrate sensory information with open loop theory, and instead must rely on feedback forward control. Open loop control is a feed-forward form of motor control, and it is used to control rapid ballistic movement to end up before any sensory information can be processed. Schema theory. All the information needed to make a movement decision. It is stored in the brain as long-term memory. Schema theory challenges the open and closed loop theories and was developed by Schmidt in 1977. He suggested that motor programs can be clustered and are changeable to respond to the situation. He also stated that the larger the motor program that is achieved through practice, the easier it becomes adapted to new situations. Recall schema. This occurs before a movement is initiated, includes the following information which the performer must know to perform a schema. Initial conditions. Where is the goal? Opposition and teammates. What is the environment like? Is it grass, astroturf, wet or dry, windy? What condition am I in? Am I fresh? Am I tired? Am I injured? Or am I carrying an illness? How fast do I need to go? Where do I pass the ball to? How hard do I need to kick the ball? Which technique will produce the best results? Recognition schema. In order to correct or alter a response, the athlete needs to know movement outcomes. From knowledge of results could be success, failure. Sensory consequence. From knowledge of performance, how did it look? Extrinsic feedback. How did it feel? Intrinsic feedback. This could mean a pass that you made with a technique that you used and how hard you hit it, and that pass was inaccurate and unsuccessful. The next time you made that pass, you know you would have to do to avoid the outcome. You know you have to change to get a successful outcome. So if you're taking a shot at goal and you use the side of your foot, then you get that much power, but you got accuracy. The next time you would use the lace of your foot to generate more power and more speed. Information processing. The theory that is based on the idea that humans process the information they receive rather than merely responding to stimuli. Advantages of information processing. Easy way to take and learn information, can easily adapt simply on trial and error, focus on individual student and ease in her learning process and progress. If a student encounters difficulty in understanding and mastering a certain process or concept, additional support is experienced immediately and designed to provide to assist the child in achieving. Conclusion. Overall, I disagree. I agree with different methods of practice are needed in PE sessions. As a teacher or coach, you want your students to take in the information as efficiently as possible and use it when performing. Otherwise, what is the point of learning in the first place? However, every student works and learns programs information differently, and every teacher and coach delivers sessions differently. Here's a bibliography of the sites and readings and information that I've booked. Thank you very much for listening to my presentation.